The alarm bells rang across New Haven Colony like the screams of dying animals. Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of his small defense ship, watching the sensor readings with growing horror. The massive alien vessel that had just appeared in their system was unlike anything he had ever seen. The ship was dark as space itself, shaped like a giant blade cutting through the stars. It was easily 10 times larger than Murphy's entire fleet combined. Strange symbols glowed along its hull in colors that hurt to look at. The colonists called it a nightmare made real. "Sir, we're getting reports from all over the colony," said Lieutenant Amy Wells, her voice shaking. "People are panicking. The evacuation ships can't launch fast enough." Murphy gripped the rail in front of him. New Haven was home to 50,000 people. They had families, children, dreams of a peaceful life on this beautiful world. Now death had come calling from the void between stars. The alien ship belonged to the HFY, a race that had terrorized the galaxy for 300 years. They appeared without warning, demanded surrender, and destroyed anyone who refused. 47 worlds had fallen to them. Entire civilizations had been wiped from existence. Their leader was known only as Vorthak the Destroyer. No one had ever seen him and lived to tell about it. Stories said he could kill with a look, that his ship could turn planets to dust with a single blast. Children across the galaxy had nightmares about him. "Captain, they're scanning us," Wells reported. "Our shields are holding, but barely." Murphy watched as his weapons officer tried to target the alien ship. The computers couldn't get a lock. Every time they tried to fire, their systems shut down. It was like the alien vessel was playing with them, showing them how helpless they were. "Sir, incoming message from the alien ship," the communications officer called out. "Put it through," Murphy said, though his mouth felt dry as sand. The main screen flickered to life. Instead of showing the alien commander, it displayed only text in perfect human standard language. The words appeared slowly, as if being written by an invisible hand. "I am Vorthak of the HFY Empire. This world now belongs to us. You have 24 hours to evacuate all military personnel and surrender control of your planet. Resist, and your people will share the fate of the 47 worlds that came before you." The message ended. The screen went dark. Murphy looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were all young, most of them barely out of the academy. They had signed up to protect the colony from pirates and wild animals, not to face the most feared warrior in the known galaxy. "What are your orders, Captain?" Wells asked. Murphy wanted to run. Every instinct told him to grab his family and get on the next evacuation ship. But he was a soldier. These people depended on him. "Send word to the Colony Council," he said finally. "Tell them we need to meet immediately, and get me a direct line to Earth Command. They need to know what's happening here." As his crew rushed to carry out his orders, Murphy stared at the alien ship on his screen. It hung in space like a dark star, silent and waiting. He could almost feel eyes watching him from across the void. Down on New Haven's surface, the evacuation was not going well. The spaceport was packed with people trying to get off the planet. Ships that were meant to carry 50 people now held twice that number. Children cried for lost parents. Families were torn apart in the chaos. Lisa Carter stood in the middle of it all, watching the panic with sad eyes. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. She had come to New Haven to research the local plants and animals. Now she might die here instead. Unlike the others, Lisa was not running. She stood near her small laboratory, looking up at the stars where she knew the alien ship waited. Other scientists had already packed up their equipment and left on the First available transport. They called her crazy for staying. Lisa, you need to get out of here, said Dr. Bob Martinez, one of her colleagues. He was loading the last of his research data onto a transport ship. That alien will be here soon. You know what happened to the other worlds. Lisa shook her head. Someone needs to stay. Someone needs to try to understand them. Understand them? Martinez stared at her like she had lost her mind. Lisa, they're killers. They don't want to be understood. They want us gone. Maybe, Lisa said quietly. But what if we're wrong? What if they're not monsters, just people we don't understand yet? Martinez grabbed her by the shoulders. Listen to me. Vorthak the Destroyer has killed billions of people. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't show mercy. He destroys everything in his path. Please come with me while there's still time. Lisa gently removed his hands from her shoulders. I can't, Bob. If I run now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if someone had tried to talk to them instead of just being afraid. Martinez shook his head in defeat. You're the bravest person I know, Lisa. Also, the craziest. He gave her a quick hug. I hope you're right about them. I really do. As Martinez's ship lifted off into the darkening sky, Lisa walked back to her lab. She had work to do. If the alien warrior was coming to New Haven, she wanted to be ready for him. Not with weapons or threats, but with something much more powerful. She wanted to be ready with friendship. The Colony Council met in emergency session that night. The leaders argued about what to do. Some wanted to fight, even though they knew they would lose. Others wanted to surrender immediately and hope for mercy. Captain Murphy sat at the table listening to the debate. He had talked to Earth Command, but help was weeks away. By then, New Haven would be just another name on the list of worlds destroyed by the Kethvar. We have to face facts, said Mayor Helen Price. We can't fight them. Our only choice is to surrender and pray they let our people live. Surrender? General Mike Adams slammed his fist on the table. I won't hand over this world to some alien butcher. We have to try to fight. With what? Murphy asked. Our weapons can't even target. Their ship. They could destroy us without even trying. As the argument continued, Lisa Carter walked into the council chamber. Everyone turned to look at her. She was not supposed to be there. Only government and military leaders were allowed in these meetings. I'm sorry to interrupt, Lisa said, calmly. But I have an idea. Mayor Price frowned. Dr. Carter, this is a closed meeting. You should be on an evacuation ship. Maybe, Lisa said. But before I go, I want to try something. Something that might save all of us. What are you talking about? General Adams demanded. Lisa took a deep breath. I want to invite Vorthak the Destroyer to tea. The room fell silent. Then everyone started talking at once, their voices rising, in shock and disbelief. Lisa waited for them to quiet down. You're insane, Adams said finally. That alien will kill you the moment he sees you. Maybe, Lisa said again. But what if he doesn't? What if he's just lonely? What if no one has? Ever tried to be kind to him before? Murphy stared at her. You really think you can change the mind of the most feared warrior in the galaxy with a cup of tea? Lisa smiled. I think it's worth trying. After all, what's the worst that could happen? He kills me. He's going to kill all of us anyway if we can't find another way. The council members looked at each other. They knew she was right. They were going to die anyway. Maybe it was time to try something completely different. Maybe it was time to try being human. Lisa Carter sat alone in her laboratory as the sun rose over New Haven. Outside her window, she could see the last evacuation ships leaving trails of fire across the morning sky. Soon she would be the only scientist left on the planet. She had spent the night preparing for something that everyone else thought was impossible. On her desk sat a simple china tea set that her grandmother had given her before she left Earth. Next to it was a plate of cookies she had baked herself, using flour from New Haven's own wheat fields. The Colony Council had finally agreed to let her try her plan, mostly because they had no other choice. Captain Murphy had even helped her set up a communication array in the abandoned botanical garden on the edge of town. If she was going to die talking to an alien monster, at least she would die somewhere beautiful. Lisa picked up the communication device and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. She was nervous, the way anyone would be before meeting someone new. The fact that this someone had destroyed 47 worlds seemed less important right now than making a good first impression. She pressed the transmit button and spoke clearly into the microphone. This is Dr. Lisa Carter of New Haven Colony. I would like to extend an invitation to the commander of the HFY vessel. You are welcome to join me for tea in our botanical garden. The address is coordinates 45.2 north, 127.8 west. I will be waiting there at noon today if you would like to come. She paused, thinking of what else to say. Oh, and please don't worry about bringing anything. I have everything we need for a nice afternoon together. Lisa released the transmit button and sat back in her chair. There. She had done it. She had invited the most feared warrior in the galaxy to have tea with her like he was a neighbor dropping by for a chat. Now she just had to wait and see if he would answer. Aboard the Esau, massive HFY warship, Vorthak the Destroyer stood in his command chamber, staring at the communication he had just received. In 300 years of conquest, no one had ever sent him a message like this one. Vorthak was enormous, even by HFY standards. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his body covered in natural armor that had been scarred by countless battles. 4 powerful arms ended in claws that could cut through metal. His face was hidden behind a war mask that had not been removed in over a century. The other HFY warriors on the bridge watched their commander carefully. They had never seen him stand so still for so long. Usually by now he would have begun the bombardment that would force the planet's surrender. "Lord Vorthak," said his second-in-command, War Captain Thulmag. "Shall we begin the attack? The humans' deadline expires in 6 hours. Vorthak did not answer. He was reading the message again, trying to understand it. His translation computer had processed the words correctly, but they still made no sense to him. What was tea? What was a botanical garden? Why would this human want to meet with him? "Lord Vorthak?" Thulmag tried again. "I have received a communication from the surface," Vorthak said finally. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "A human wishes to meet with me." The bridge fell silent. The other warriors looked at each other in confusion. In all their years of service, they had never heard of such a thing. "A surrender, my lord?" asked War Lieutenant Graktos. "No," Vorthak said slowly. "An invitation." Thulmag frowned. "Invitation to what, my lord?" Vorthak looked at the message one more time. "To something called tea." The HFY warriors had no idea what to make of this. Their people had been conquerors for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to be invited anywhere. They took what they wanted by force. They did not ask permission. They certainly did not have tea. It could be a trap, my lord, Thulmag suggested. Perhaps they plan to ambush you. Vorthak considered this. It was possible. Humans were known to be clever and unpredictable. But what could one human do against him? He had faced entire armies and emerged victorious. One small human with tea seemed like a very weak trap indeed. My lord, your orders? Thulmag pressed. Vorthak made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Prepare a shuttle, he commanded. I will go to this botanical garden. My lord, that is not wise, Thulmag protested. Let me send a squad of warriors to investigate. First? No, Vorthak said firmly. The human invited me, not my warriors. I will go alone. The bridge erupted in shocked voices as the warriors protested their commander's decision. Vorthak silenced them with a look. I have made my choice, he said. Prepare the shuttle. As his crew rushed to obey, Vorthak returned to his private chambers. He stood before a mirror and looked at himself for the first time in years. Behind, his war mask, ancient eyes stared back at him. When had he become so old? When had the joy of battle turned into mere routine? He tried to remember the last time someone had spoken to him without fear in their voice. He could not. Even his own warriors were afraid of him. Fear was all he had known for centuries. This human, this Lisa Carter, did not sound afraid. Her voice had been calm, friendly even. She had spoken to him like he was a person, not a monster. When was the last time that had happened? Vorthak reached up and touched his war mask. He had worn it for so long that he sometimes forgot what his real face looked like underneath. The mask was meant to frighten enemies, to make him appear more terrible than any living thing had a right to be. But if this human truly wanted to meet him, perhaps it was time to remember what he looked like without it. Back on New Haven, Lisa was setting up her tea service in the botanical garden. The garden was one of the most beautiful places on the colony world. Flowers from a dozen different planets grew there in carefully tended beds. Trees from Earth provided shade over winding paths. A small stream ran through the center, creating a peaceful sound that helped visitors relax. Lisa had chosen this spot carefully. If she was going to meet an alien warrior, she wanted it to be somewhere that showed the best of what humans could create. The garden was not about conquest or domination. It was about growth, beauty, and the patient care that made life flourish. She arranged 2 chairs at a small table beneath a flowering apple tree from Earth. The tea set looked tiny and fragile on the wooden surface. But Lisa thought that was perfect. Sometimes the most powerful things were also the most delicate. Captain Murphy arrived just as Lisa was putting the finishing touches on her setup. Are you sure about this, Lisa? He asked. I've got my ship standing by. We can pull you out of here the moment things go wrong. Lisa smiled at him. Thanks, Jake, but I don't think that will be necessary. You really believe this will work? Lisa looked around the garden at all the beautiful growing things. I believe in the power of treating people with kindness, even when everyone says they don't deserve it, especially then. Murphy shook his head. You're either the bravest person I know or the craziest. Maybe both, Lisa laughed. But someone has to try something different. We can't keep solving problems with fear and violence forever. A few minutes before noon, Lisa's communication device chirped. She pressed the receive button and heard a voice that sent chills down her spine. It was deep and rough, like the sound of distant thunder. "Human," the voice said. "I have considered your invitation." Lisa's heart began to race, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm so glad to hear from you. Will you be able to join me?" There was a long pause. Then the alien voice spoke a single word that changed everything. "Curious." Lisa felt tears spring to her eyes. Not tears of fear, but of hope. In that one word, she heard something she had not expected. She heard wonder. "I will come to your botanical garden," Vorthak continued. "But I come alone. No weapons, no guards, just me." "That's perfect," Lisa said. "I'm alone too, just me and the tea." Another pause. Then, "What is tea?" Lisa laughed, a sound like music in the quiet garden. "Oh, you're going to love it. It's one of the best things about being human." High above them, a small shuttle detached from the massive HFY warship and began its descent toward the planet. Inside, the most feared warrior in the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to be invited somewhere for the first time in 300 years. The galaxy held its breath as two very different people prepared to meet for tea. The shuttle landed in the center of the botanical garden with barely a whisper of sound. It was sleek and black like its mothership, but smaller than Lisa had expected. As the engines powered down, she stood up from her chair and smoothed down her simple blue dress. She had chosen her most comfortable clothes for this meeting, the kind she would wear to have tea with a friend. The shuttle's door opened with a soft hiss. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a shadow appeared in the doorway, and Lisa got her first look at Vorthak the Destroyer. He was enormous. Even ducking to fit through the shuttle door, he towered over everything in the garden. His 4 arms moved with careful precision as he stepped onto the grass. His body was covered in natural armor that looked like it had been carved from black stone. Scars crisscrossed the surface, telling stories of 1,000 battles. But it was his face that surprised Lisa the most. She had expected a monster, something terrible and inhuman. Instead, she saw an old warrior who looked very, very tired. His skin was gray-green, and his eyes were a deep golden color that reminded her of autumn sunsets. Those eyes looked around the garden with something that might have been wonder. Vorthak stopped about 10 feet away from the table. He seemed unsure of what to do next. Lisa realized that he was probably as nervous as she was, though he hid it. "Better." "Hello," Lisa said simply. "I'm Lisa Carter. Thank you for coming." Vorthak stared at her for a long moment. She was so small compared to him, no bigger than a child by his standards. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her brown eyes were warm and friendly. She showed no fear of him at all, which was something he had never experienced before. "You are not afraid," he said. It was not a question. "Should I be?" Lisa asked. Vorthak considered this. "Most beings fear me. They run when they see me coming. They beg for mercy when I speak to them." "I'm not most beings," Lisa said with a smile. "Would you like to sit down? I made fresh tea, and the cookies are still warm from the oven." Vorthak looked at the small wooden chair beside the table. It was clearly built for someone much smaller than him. He was not sure it would hold his weight. "I may be too large for your furniture," he said. "Oh, don't worry about that," Lisa said. "I brought a blanket, too. We can sit on the grass if you're more comfortable that way. Picnics are nice sometimes." The word picnic was not in Vorthak's translation database. He filed it away as something to research later. Right now, he was more interested in watching this strange human female who treated him like a normal person instead of a weapon of mass destruction. Lisa spread a large checkered blanket on the grass beneath the apple tree. She moved the tea service to the center and gestured for Vorthak to join her. After a moment's hesitation, he lowered himself carefully onto the blanket. Even sitting, he was taller than Lisa when she stood up. "This is nice," Lisa said as she poured tea into 2 cups. "I love this spot in the garden. You can see the whole valley from here, and the flowers smell wonderful this time of year." Vorthak looked around at the carefully tended plants. "These are not native to this world," he observed. "That's right," Lisa said, pleased that he had noticed. "We brought seeds and cuttings from many different planets. Earth mostly, but some from the Centauri colonies too. It takes a lot of work to make plants from different worlds grow together. But it's worth it." She handed him a cup of tea. It looked tiny in his massive hands, like a doll's toy. He held it carefully, afraid he might break it. "How do I—" he began, then stopped. "Just sip it slowly," Lisa said, demonstrating with her own cup. "It's hot, so be careful. I added a little honey to make it sweet." Vorthak lifted the cup to his lips and took a small sip. The warm liquid was unlike anything he had ever tasted. It was soothing and complex, with flavors he could not identify. The honey added a sweetness that reminded him of something from long ago, though he could not remember what. "This is pleasant," he said, surprised. "I'm so glad you like it," Lisa said. "Tea is one of my favorite things. It's a way of taking time to be calm and peaceful, even when everything else is busy and stressful." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping their tea and listening to the sound of the stream. Vorthak found himself relaxing in a way he had not done for decades. The garden was peaceful in a way that his warship could never be. The flowers filled the air with sweet scents, and the grass was soft beneath him. "Why did you invite me here?" he asked finally. Lisa thought about how to answer. "Because you seemed lonely," she said. Vorthak almost dropped his teacup. "Lonely?" "Your message yesterday," Lisa explained. "It was very formal and official, but there was something sad about it too. Like you were tired of having to be scary all the time." No one had ever described Vorthak as sad before. Terrible, yes. Frightening, certainly. But sad? He had never thought of himself that way. "I am a warrior," he said carefully. "I conquer worlds. I do not feel sadness." "Everyone feels sadness sometimes," Lisa said gently. "It's part of being alive. Even warriors get tired of fighting eventually." Vorthak looked down at his hands, with their sharp claws that had ended so many lives. "I have been fighting for 300 years, he said quietly. "That's a very long time," Lisa said. "What were you like before the fighting started?" The question caught Vorthak off guard. No one had ever asked him about his past, about who he had been before he became the destroyer. He searched his memory, trying to remember. "My people were different then," he said slowly. "We grew things, built things. We studied the stars because they were beautiful, not because we wanted to conquer them." "What happened?" Lisa asked. Vorthak was quiet for a long time. He sipped his tea and watched. A butterfly landed on a nearby flower. It was bright yellow with delicate wings that caught the sunlight. Such a fragile thing, but it flew wherever it wanted without fear. "Our son died," he said finally. "It happened slowly, over many years. The light grew dim, and our world grew cold. The plants died first, then the animals. We tried to save what we could, but there was not enough room on the ships for everyone. "I'm sorry," Lisa said softly. "We became refugees," Vorthok continued. "We looked for new worlds where we could live in peace. But every world we found was already taken. No one wanted us. They feared us because we were different. They drove us away with weapons and threats." He paused, lost in old memories. "So we learned to be what they said we were. If they wanted monsters, we became monsters. If they wanted to fear us, we gave them reasons to fear. It was easier than begging for a place to call home." Lisa felt tears in her eyes. "You were just trying to survive." "At first," Vorthak said. "But after a while I forgot what we were trying to survive for. The fighting became everything. I became everything I had once hated." They sat together, quietly, sharing the weight of old pain. Lisa poured more tea for both of them and offered Vorthak a cookie. He bit into it carefully and was surprised by the sweet, buttery taste. "These are very good," he said. "Thank you. I learned the recipe from my grandmother. She always said that food tastes better when you make it for someone you care about." "You care about me?" Vorthak asked, genuinely puzzled. "I care about everyone," Lisa said. "But yes, I care about you specifically. You're interesting and you're lonely, and you remember what it was like to grow things instead of destroying them. Those are good reasons to care about someone." Vorthak stared at her. In 300 years, no one had ever said they cared about him. His own warriors obeyed him out of fear. His enemies hated him. But this small human female, who had every reason to be terrified, said she cared about him like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I do not understand you," he said. Lisa laughed, a warm sound that made something tight in Vorthak's chest ease a little. "That's okay. I don't understand myself sometimes, but understanding isn't always necessary for friendship." "Friendship? Would you like to be friends?" Lisa asked. "I know we just met, but I think we could be good friends if you wanted to try." Vorthak looked around the garden again, at the flowers that had been brought from different worlds and convinced to grow together, at the butterfly that had no fear of his deadly claws, at the human woman who offered friendship to the most feared being in the galaxy like she was offering another cup of tea. "I would like that," he said quietly. "I would like that very much." As the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves of the apple tree, the galaxy's most terrible warrior and a gentle botanist sat together drinking tea and talking about flowers. It was the beginning of something that would change both their lives forever. Neither of them noticed the small recording device that Captain Murphy had hidden in the garden, or the fact that their conversation was being broadcast to ships throughout the system. By the time the sun set, every major news network in human space would be showing footage of Vorthak the Destroyer sharing cookies with a woman who had invited him for tea. The galaxy was about to learn that even monsters could be lonely, and that sometimes all it took to make a friend was asking someone to sit down and have a drink together. 3 days had passed since the first tea meeting, and Lisa Carter found herself looking forward to 2 o'clock each afternoon. That was when Vorthak would land his shuttle in the botanical garden and join her for their daily conversation. What had started as a desperate attempt to save her colony was becoming the highlight of her day. Today she had brought a thermos of hot chocolate along with the usual tea. Earth's newspapers were calling her either the bravest woman alive or completely insane. She did not read the newspapers anymore, Vorthak's shuttle touched down exactly at 2 o'clock, as it had each day. Lisa smiled as the massive alien warrior emerged and walked carefully through her flower beds. He had learned to watch where he stepped after accidentally crushing a rose bush on the second day. His apology had been so sincere that Lisa had almost cried. "Good afternoon, Vorthak," she called out, waving from their usual spot under the apple tree. "Good afternoon, Lisa," he replied. His voice was still deep and rough, but there was warmth in it now that had not been there before. As he settled onto the blanket beside her, Lisa noticed something different about him. He was still enormous and intimidating, but there was a relaxation in his posture that had not been there at first. His forearms moved more freely, and his golden eyes held a brightness that reminded her of a child discovering something wonderful. "I brought something new today," Lisa said, pouring the hot chocolate into a large mug she had found that could accommodate his hands. "This is called hot chocolate. It's made from cocoa beans that grow on Earth." Vorthak accepted the mug carefully and sniffed at the dark liquid. A look of surprise crossed his face. "This smells like happiness," he said. Lisa laughed. "That's the best description of hot chocolate I've ever heard. Try it." Vorthak took a sip and closed his eyes. For a moment, his ancient face looked almost peaceful. "On my homeworld, we had something similar. We made it from the seeds of the Kaleth tree. My mother used to make it for me when I was young." It was the first time Vorthak had mentioned his family. Lisa set down her own mug and gave him her full attention. "Tell me about your mother," she said gently. Vorthak was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. "Her name was Velthara. She was a botanist, like you. She could make anything grow, even in the poorest soil. Our people called her the garden singer because she would hum while she worked, and the plants seemed to grow better when they heard her voice." "She sounds wonderful," Lisa said. She was. She tried to save as many plants as possible when our sun began to die. She said that preserving life was the most important thing anyone could do. Vorthak looked around the garden. "She would have loved this place." "What happened to her?" "She died in the evacuation ships. The journey was long and hard, and we did not have enough medical supplies. She gave her medicine to the younglings so they would have a better chance to survive." Vorthak's voice grew rough with old pain. "I held her hand as she died. She made me promise to keep taking care of the plants she had saved." "Did you?" Lisa asked. Vorthak shook his head. "They all died in the first battle. We were attacked by pirates who wanted to steal our ships. In the fighting, the garden domes were broken and exposed to space. Everything my mother had worked to save was lost in minutes." Lisa reached out without thinking and placed her small hand on one of Vorthak's massive ones. He looked down at the contact in surprise. No one had touched him gently in centuries. "I'm so sorry," she said. "That must have been terrible. It was the day I decided that caring about things only led to pain," Vorthak said. "I threw away my mother's garden tools and picked up weapons instead. I told myself that if the universe wanted to be cruel, I would be crueler. But you weren't cruel to me," Lisa pointed out. Vorthak looked at her with something like wonder. "No, I was not. I do not understand why." "Maybe because I reminded you of your mother," Lisa suggested. "We're both botanists who believe in growing things instead of destroying them." "Perhaps," Vorthak said. He turned his hand over so he could hold Lisa's fingers gently in his palm. You have made me remember things I thought I had forgotten. Good things? Mostly. The smell of growing earth, the sound of rain on leaves, the way flowers open to face the morning sun, my mother singing while she worked. He paused. The feeling of being wanted somewhere. Lisa squeezed his fingers. You're wanted here. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the afternoon shadows grow longer. A small bird landed on the table and began pecking at cookie crumbs. Instead of being startled by Vorthak's presence, it seemed completely unconcerned by the massive alien warrior. The creatures here are not afraid of me, Vorthak observed. Animals are good judges of character, Lisa said. They can sense when someone means them no harm. But I have harmed many beings. That was before. This is now. The bird doesn't care what you did yesterday. It only cares whether you're going to hurt it today. Vorthak watched the bird hop closer to his hand. I used to have a pet when I was young. A small flying creature called a vestan. It had feathers like silver and would perch on my shoulder while I studied. What happened to it? It died of old age the year before our sun began to fail. I buried it in my mother's garden and planted a flower over its grave. Vorthak's voice grew sad. I wonder sometimes if that flower still grows somewhere among the stars. Maybe it does, Lisa said. Life has a way of surviving in places we never expect. As they talked, neither of them noticed the small crowd that had gathered at the edge of the garden. Word had spread throughout the remaining population of New Haven that their local botanist was having daily tea parties with the most feared warrior in the galaxy. Some came to watch out of curiosity. Others came because they could not believe the stories they had heard. Captain Murphy was among the watchers, along with several members of the Colony Council. They stood far enough away that they could not hear the conversation. But they could see the alien warrior's relaxed posture and the gentle way he held Lisa's hand. I don't believe it, whispered Mayor Price. He looks almost human. He's still a killer, muttered General Adams. Don't let this little tea party fool you. The moment she stops being useful to him, he'll destroy this world like all the others. Murphy was not so sure. He had been watching these meetings for 3 days now, and what he saw did not match anything he knew about Vorthak the Destroyer. The alien warrior was careful around Lisa, protective even. When a butterfly had landed on her shoulder yesterday, Vorthak had sat perfectly still until it flew away, as if he was afraid any movement might disturb it. Look at how he moves around her, Murphy said quietly. He's being careful not to frighten her. That's not the behavior of someone who plans to kill. It's a trick, Adams insisted. He's playing with her like a cat with a mouse. But as they watched, Vorthak gently helped Lisa to her feet and walked with her to examine a patch of flowers that was blooming near the stream. He listened intently as she explained something about soil composition, nodding occasionally and asking questions. His massive form bent down so he could get a closer look at the tiny blossoms. That doesn't look like a cat playing with a mouse, Murphy said. Back at the flower bed, Lisa was explaining how they had modified the soil to accommodate plants from different worlds. Vorthak found himself fascinated by the complex chemistry involved. His people had been master gardeners once, but they had never attempted anything on this scale. You have made the Earth itself a bridge between worlds, he said with admiration. That's a beautiful way to put it, Lisa said. That's exactly what we were trying to do. Create a place where different forms of life could exist together. My people could learn from this. Vorthak said thoughtfully. We have been wanderers for so long that we have forgotten how to make things grow. You could learn, Lisa said. It's never too late to start over. Vorthak looked at her with surprise. You think I could grow things again? After everything I have done? I think you want to, Lisa said. I think that's why you keep coming back here. Not just to see me, but to be around growing things again, to remember what it felt like to create instead of destroy. Vorthak considered this. She was right, though he had not admitted it to himself until now. Each day in the garden made him feel more like the person he had been before the wars began. Being around Lisa and her flowers was healing something inside him that he had thought was broken forever. If I wanted to learn, he said carefully, would you teach me? Lisa's face lit up with joy. I would love to teach you. We could start with something simple, maybe some herbs that are easy to grow. I have seeds from Earth that would do well. In a ship's garden. A ship's garden, Vorthak repeated. The idea seemed impossible and wonderful at the same time. Why not? Your people need food, don't they? And there's nothing better for morale than fresh vegetables and flowers. It would give your crew something to take care of instead of just conquering all the time. As the sun began to set, Vorthak walked Lisa back to her laboratory. Their daily meetings were becoming the most important part of both their lives, though neither of them had said so out loud. Will you come tomorrow? Lisa asked, as she did every day. Yes, Vorthak replied, as he did every day. But today he added something new. Thank you, Lisa, for the tea and the chocolate, and for treating me. War Prime Drakthul stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the communication reports from across the galaxy with growing fury. For 7 days, news networks had been broadcasting footage of Vorthak the Destroyer having tea parties with a human female. The most feared warrior in Kethvar history was being made to look like a weak fool, and it was hurting their reputation throughout the galaxy. This is intolerable, Drakthul growled to his assembled officers. Vorthak was sent to conquer one small human world. Instead, he sits in gardens drinking plant water with the enemy. War Captain Zelnoth nodded in agreement. The other species are beginning to whisper that the Kethvar have gone soft. 3 systems have refused our demands for surrender in the past week alone. They say if Vorthak can be tamed by a cup of tea, perhaps we are not as dangerous as we claim to be. Drakthul's 4 hands clenched into fists. He had fought beside Vorthak for 2 centuries, had watched him destroy worlds without hesitation. To see his old comrade reduced to this was both infuriating and embarrassing. Prepare the war fleet, he commanded. We will go to this new haven and remind both Vorthak and the galaxy what it means to be Kethvar. What are your orders regarding Vorthak himself? Asked War Lieutenant Kralvex. If he has truly been corrupted by these humans, then he is no longer one of us, Drakthul said coldly. A weak Kethvar is worse than a dead one. On New Haven, Lisa was unaware of the approaching danger. She was too busy helping Vorthak design his ship's garden to pay attention to the news reports. They had spent the morning selecting seeds that would grow well in artificial environments, and Vorthak was as excited as a child planning his first pet. The herbs should go near the light panels, Lisa explained, sketching on a piece of paper. They need more sun than the root vegetables, and you'll want to put the flowers somewhere your crew can see them. Nothing brightens a day like seeing something beautiful. Vorthak studied the plans carefully. My people have forgotten the value of beauty. We have been warriors for so long that we think only of function and efficiency. Maybe it's time to remember, Lisa suggested. Your mother would have wanted you to bring beauty back to your people's lives. The mention of his mother made Vorthak smile, something that would have terrified anyone who had known him before these garden meetings. Yes, she would have. She always said that a life without flowers was only half a life. Their peaceful planning session was interrupted by Captain Murphy's voice crackling over Lisa's communication device. Lisa, you need to hear this. We're picking up long-range sensors. There's a HFY War fleet approaching the system, 12 ships, including a flagship. They'll be here in 6 hours. Lisa felt her blood turn cold. She looked at Vorthak, who had gone very still. Drakthul, Vorthak said quietly. You know them? Lisa asked. Drakthul is my superior. He leads the HFY High Command. Vorthak stood up, his peaceful mood evaporating. He has come because of me, because I have not completed my mission. What does that mean for us? Murphy's voice asked over the radio. Vorthak was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of war. It means you should evacuate everyone who remains on this world. When Drakthul arrives, he will not be interested in tea and conversation. He will destroy this place to make an example of what happens when HFY authority is questioned. And you? Lisa asked, though she was afraid of the answer. I will be executed for failure and weakness. It is the HFY way. Lisa stood up and grabbed Vorthak's largest hand with both of hers. Then we'll leave together. You can come with us. Vorthak looked down at her with surprise. You would take me with you? After everything my people have done? You're not your people, Lisa said firmly. You're my friend. Friends don't abandon each other when things get difficult. The simple declaration of friendship hit Vorthak harder than any weapon ever had. In 300 years of conquest, no one had ever called him friend. No one had ever offered to protect him. The feeling was so overwhelming that for a moment he could not speak. I cannot run, he said finally. If I flee, Drakthul will take his anger out on other worlds. Innocent people will die because of my cowardice. Then we'll face him together, Lisa said. No. Vorthak gently removed his hands from hers. You must leave this place, Lisa. Take your people and go far away. What is coming will be terrible, and I will not have your death on my conscience. I'm not leaving without you. You must. I won't. They stared at each other, both stubborn in their own way. Finally, Vorthak sighed, a sound like wind through ancient trees. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? He asked. Lisa thought about how to explain it. Because you're worth caring about. Because you've shown me that even the most broken person can learn to be gentle again. Because friendship means standing by someone even when it's scary. You are not afraid? I'm terrified, Lisa admitted. But I'm more afraid of living in a universe where people abandon their friends when trouble comes. Vorthak looked around the garden one last time. The flowers were blooming beautifully in the afternoon sun. The stream gurgled peacefully over its stones. A butterfly landed on the apple tree where they had shared so many conversations. Very well, he said. We will face whatever comes together. But I want you to promise me something. Anything. If I fall in the battle that is coming, promise me you will continue to grow things. Promise me you will remember that there was once a HFY who learned to love flowers instead of destroying them. Tears ran down Lisa's cheeks. I promise, but you're not going to fall. We're going to figure this out together. As the afternoon wore on, the approaching war fleet drew closer. Captain Murphy worked frantically to evacuate the remaining civilians, but many refused to leave. They had heard the stories of Lisa and Vorthak's friendship, and they wanted to see how the story would end. Dr. Bob Martinez was among those who stayed, despite having left once before. He arrived at the garden as the sun was setting, carrying a large thermos of coffee and a bag of sandwiches. "Thought you might be hungry," he said to Lisa. "And I figured, if we're all going to die tomorrow, I'd rather do it with friends than alone on some evacuation ship." More people arrived as word spread. Mayor Price came with a group of colonists who had decided to stay. Captain Murphy brought several of his officers. They all gathered in the botanical garden, drawn by the strange hope that somehow friendship could triumph over fear. Vorthak watched the humans gather around him with amazement. These people had every reason to hate and fear him, yet they had chosen to stand with him in his darkest hour. It was the kind of loyalty he had only dreamed of inspiring. "I do not understand your species," he told Lisa as they sat together under the stars. "What's to understand?" Lisa asked. "We protect the people we care about. That's what humans do." Even when it is hopeless. Especially then. High above them, Vorthak's ship hung in orbit, dark and silent. His crew waited aboard, uncertain of their commander's orders. They had received no communication from him since the war fleet had been detected. On the flagship approaching New Haven, Drakthul studied tactical displays and planned his attack. He would arrive at dawn, he decided. The humans would surrender immediately when they saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them, and Vorthak would face judgment for his betrayal of everything the Kethvar stood for. What Drakthul did not expect was that by dawn he would be the one facing judgment. Not from his enemies, but from his own conscience, awakened by the sight of a warrior who had learned to choose love over fear. The night passed slowly for those gathered in the garden. They talked quietly, shared food, and watched the stars. Lisa sat close to Vorthak, her small hand resting on his arm. She was not sure what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she would face it with the best friend she had ever had. As the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, 12 dark shapes appeared in the sky above New Haven. The war fleet had arrived, and with it, the test of whether friendship could truly be stronger than fear. The galaxy was about to find out what happened when love met violence in a small garden where flowers grew and warriors learned to drink tea. The war fleet descended through New Haven's atmosphere like a plague of metal locusts, their dark hulls blocking out the morning sun. 12 massive Kethvar warships took positions around the botanical garden, their weapons trained on the small group of humans, and one rebellious warrior who waited among the flowers. War Prime Drakthul's flagship landed in the center of the garden with a thunderous roar that shook the ground and sent birds fleeing from the trees. The landing ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics, and out marched 50 Kethvar warriors in full battle armor. At their head walked Drakthul himself, a figure even more imposing than Vorthak. Where Vorthak was scarred by battle, Drakthul was pristine in his armor of polished black metal. Where Vorthak's eyes held warmth, Drakthul's were cold as the space between stars. He was everything the Kethvar had become: powerful, merciless, and empty. Lisa stood beside Vorthak near their usual tea table, which looked absurdly small and delicate, surrounded by weapons of war. Her hand found his, and she squeezed it gently. She could feel him trembling, though whether from fear or rage, she could not tell. "Vorthak," Drakthul's voice boomed across the garden. "7 days I have waited for word of this world's conquest. 7 days I have watched you disgrace our people's name across every news network in the galaxy. Explain yourself. Vorthak stepped forward, placing himself between Drakthul and Lisa. I have found something more valuable than conquest, old friend. Friend? Drakthul's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. You speak of friendship to me while you betray everything we have built together, while you make us look weak. Before our enemies? I have not made us weak, Vorthak said calmly. I have made us something better. Drakthul gestured to his warriors who raised their weapons. You have made us laughingstocks. The entire galaxy watches recordings of you playing tea party with this pathetic human female. 3 systems have already refused our demands because they think we have gone soft. Perhaps, Lisa said, stepping out from behind Vorthak. Despite his attempt to protect her, they refused because they saw a better way to live, one that doesn't involve fear and conquest. Drakthul turned his cold gaze to her. Ah, the famous Dr. Carter, the human who thinks she can tame the galaxy's greatest predators with plant water and sweet cakes. I don't think I tamed anyone, Lisa said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. I just made a friend. Friendship, Drakthul spat. What use is friendship? Can it feed your people? Can it protect them from their enemies? Can it give them worlds to call home? Yes, Lisa said simply. It can do all of those things, but only if you let it. The War Prime stared at her as if she had spoken in an alien language. You are either very brave or very stupid, human. Maybe both, Lisa admitted. But I'd rather be brave and stupid than cruel and empty. Drakthul's hand moved to the weapon at his side. You dare call me empty? I call you lonely, Lisa said, and her words hit harder than any insult could have. You're just like Vorthak was when I first met him. Angry and afraid and so tired of fighting that you've forgotten what you were fighting for. I fight for the Kethvar people. No, Vorthak said quietly. You fight because it is all you know how to do. Just as I did, until Lisa showed me there was another way. Drakthul whirled to face his former comrade. She has poisoned your mind with weakness. She has reminded me of our strength, Vorthak replied. The strength my mother tried to teach me before the wars began, the strength to create instead of destroy, to nurture instead of conquer. Your mother was a fool who died uselessly. The words hung in the air like a poison cloud. Vorthak's golden eyes blazed with fury, and for a moment, Lisa thought he might attack his former friend. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone present. He laughed. You are wrong, Vorthak said. My mother was the wisest person I have ever known. She understood that life is precious, that growing things is harder and more important than destroying them, and she was not useless. She lives on in every garden that blooms, in every flower that turns its face to the sun. He gestured to the plants around them. She lives on in this place, where beings from different worlds have learned to grow together, where an old warrior learned to remember who he used to be. Enough of this madness. Drakthul drew his weapon, a massive energy rifle that crackled with destructive power. You will execute this human as proof of your loyalty to the Kethvar, or I will execute you both. The garden fell silent except for the gentle babbling of the stream. Lisa felt her heart pounding, but she did not move away from Vorthak's side. Captain Murphy and the other humans who had stayed to witness this confrontation watched with held breath. Vorthak looked at the weapon pointed at Lisa, then at Drakthul, then at the human woman who had changed his life with nothing more than kindness and tea. No, he said. What did you say? I said, no. Vorthak moved to stand directly in front of Lisa, his massive form shielding her completely. I will not harm her. She is my friend, and I will protect her with my life. Drakthul's face twisted with rage. Then you have chosen your path, traitor! Warriors, prepare to fire! But something unexpected happened. About half of the Kethvar warriors lowered their weapons instead of raising them. These were soldiers who had served under Vorthak for decades, who had seen him lead with honor and courage. The sight of their commander choosing to protect instead of destroy stirred something in their hearts that they had thought was dead. "What are you doing?" Drakthul demanded of his own troops. War Captain Thulmag, Vorthak's second-in-command, stepped forward. Perhaps Lord Vorthak is right, War Prime. Perhaps there is a better way than endless conquest. You too, Thulmag? Has this human witch poisoned all of you? No witch could do what she has done, Thulmag said. She has reminded us that we were once a people who created beauty, not just destruction. That we once had hope for something better than this endless war. More warriors began to lower their weapons. Some looked uncertain, caught between old loyalties and new possibilities. Others seemed relieved, as if they had been waiting for someone to give them permission to stop fighting. Drakthul found himself facing a mutiny, but not one based on ambition or greed. This was something far more dangerous. A rebellion based on hope. "This is treason," he snarled. "I will see you all executed for this." "Then you'll have to execute half the fleet," said War Lieutenant Graktos, "because word of what happened here has spread to every ship. Our people are tired, War Prime. Tired of being hated and feared. Tired of destroying everything beautiful they encounter." Lisa stepped out from behind Vorthak, despite his protective gesture. "It doesn't have to be this way," she said to Drakthul. "Your people could find a home, a real home, where you could grow things again instead of taking them, where your children could learn to create instead of just fight." "Our children learn what they need to survive," Drakthul said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "They could learn both," Lisa said gently. "Survival and beauty, strength and kindness. There's room in the galaxy for everyone if we just stop trying to take everything for ourselves." She walked closer to the War Prime, ignoring the weapon he still held. "You're afraid," she said softly. "You're afraid that if you stop fighting, you'll lose everything you've built. But what if instead of losing you gained something better? What could be better than power?" "Peace," Lisa said. "Love. The chance to see your people happy instead of just victorious. The chance to be remembered for what you built instead of what you destroyed." Drakthul stared at her, this small human female who spoke to him without fear, who offered him hope instead of surrender. Around him, he could see his own warriors beginning to stand down, their weapons lowering as they listened to words they had never expected to hear. "You speak of things that do not exist," he said, but his voice was uncertain now. "They exist," Vorthak said. "I have seen them. I have felt them. This human showed me that there is more to life than conquest and death. She showed me that even an old warrior can learn to be gentle. Gentleness is weakness." "No," Lisa said. "Gentleness is the greatest strength of all. It takes more courage to show mercy than to show force, more power to create than to destroy, more wisdom to make friends than to make enemies." The standoff continued as dawn turned to full morning. The galaxy watched through news broadcasts as the most feared military force in known space faced a choice between the darkness they had always known and the light that one human woman offered them. The decision that came next would echo across the stars for generations, changing not just the fate of New Haven, but the course of galactic history itself. The moment that changed everything came when Drakthul raised his weapon to fire at Lisa, and Vorthak knocked the blast aside with his own body. The energy beam that should have killed the human botanist instead carved a burning line across Vorthak's shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the tea table. "Vorthak!" Lisa cried out, dropping to her knees beside her wounded friend. The sight of their beloved commander being shot by his own superior was too much for the Kethvar warriors who had served under Vorthak for decades. War Captain Thulmag was the first to act, tackling Drakthul and knocking the weapon from his hands. Within seconds, the garden erupted into chaos as Kethvar fought Kethvar for the first time in their recorded history. "Get him to cover!" Captain Murphy shouted to Lisa, rushing forward with several of his officers to help move the wounded Vorthak to safety behind a large boulder near the stream. Lisa pressed her hands against Vorthak's burned shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. "Why did you do that? I told you we were in this together." "Because," Vorthak said through gritted teeth, "friends protect each other. You taught me that." The battle raged around them as the Kethvar fleet split into two factions. Those loyal to Drakthul's way of conquest fought desperately against those who had been inspired by Vorthak's choice to embrace compassion. Ships in orbit opened fire on each other, while warriors on the ground grappled with former comrades. "This is madness!" Drakthul roared as he fought off 3 of his own soldiers. "You are destroying everything we have built." "We are building something better," Thulmag replied, blocking a strike from the War Prime's claws. "Something our children can be proud of instead of ashamed." Lisa looked around at the violence and felt sick. This was not what she had wanted. She had hoped to prevent war, not start a civil war among the Kethvar themselves. "I have to stop this," she said, starting to stand. Vorthak grabbed her arm with his uninjured hand. "No, Lisa, this is not your fault. This choice was always coming from my people. You simply forced us to make it sooner rather than later. But they're hurting each other because of me. They are fighting for the right to choose their own future," Vorthak corrected. "That is worth fighting for." Dr. Martinez appeared at Lisa's side, carrying a medical kit. "Let me look at that wound," he said to Vorthak. "I'm not a xenobiologist, but I know enough about field medicine to help." As Martinez worked to treat Vorthak's injury, Lisa made a decision that would later be called either the bravest or most foolish act in galactic history. She stood up and walked directly into the middle of the fighting. "Stop!" she shouted at the top of her lungs. "Everyone stop fighting!" A Kethvar warrior swinging a massive blade froze mid-strike when he realized there was a tiny human woman standing right next to him. The absurdity of the situation was so unexpected that fighting gradually ceased throughout the garden as everyone turned to stare at her. "This isn't solving anything," Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "You're all just hurting each other, and for what? Because you can't agree on whether to be cruel or kind? Because you can't decide whether to destroy things or grow them?" Drakthul pushed through the crowd of warriors until he stood facing Lisa again. His armor was dented and scarred from the fighting, and there was something desperate in his cold eyes. "You have destroyed us," he said. "We were united in purpose. Now we are divided and weak." "You were united in fear," Lisa replied. "Now you have a chance to be united in hope." That's not weakness. That's evolution. Hope is a luxury for those who have never known true hardship. Hope is a necessity for those who want to survive true hardship, Lisa countered. Your people have been running from world to world for 300 years, taking what you need by force. But force doesn't build homes. It doesn't create families. It doesn't give your children something to believe in besides violence. She gestured to the warriors around them, both factions listening intently despite themselves. Look at them, Drakthul. Really look at them. They're tired. They're tired of being hated everywhere they go, tired of never being able to rest, tired of watching their children grow up thinking that strength only comes from hurting others. Drakthul did look, and what he saw shook him to his core. His warriors, the finest soldiers in the galaxy, looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. They looked like people who had forgotten what they were fighting for. "What would you have us do?" he asked. And for the first time, his voice held uncertainty instead of anger. "We cannot undo 3 centuries of conquest. The galaxy fears and hates us. No one will welcome us with open arms." "Then we'll have to earn their trust," said Thulmag, stepping forward to stand beside Lisa. "The same way Vorthak earned hers. One conversation at a time, one act of kindness at a time." "It would take generations," Drakthul protested. "Then we'd better start now," Lisa said simply. "Because the alternative is to keep doing what you've been doing, and how has that worked out for you? Are your people happy? Are they fulfilled? Do they have anything to look forward to besides the next battle?" The questions hung in the air like accusations. Everyone present knew the answers, even if they were reluctant to admit them. Mayor Price chose that moment to step forward from where she had been hiding behind a tree. "If I may," she said nervously, addressing the assembled aliens, "New Haven would be willing to host peace talks. We have room for everyone if you're willing to try coexistence instead of conquest." "You would trust us?" asked War Lieutenant Graktos in amazement. "After everything we have done?" "We'd be willing to try," Captain Murphy said, joining the growing circle of negotiators. "Vorthak has shown us that your people are capable of change. Maybe the rest of you are too." "This is preposterous," Drakthul said, but his protests were growing weaker. "We are warriors, not farmers." "You were farmers once," Vorthak said, limping over to join the group with Martinez supporting his wounded arm. "Your mother was a farmer, just like mine. So was your father. We all were, before the wars made us forget who we really are." "The old ways are dead. The old ways are sleeping," Lisa corrected, waiting for someone brave enough to wake them up. She walked over to a patch of disturbed earth where the fighting had trampled some of her flowers. Kneeling down, she began to carefully replant the damaged blooms, her hands gentle as she worked with the soil. "This is what I do," she said as she worked. "I take things that are broken and help them grow again. Plants, ecosystems, sometimes even people. It's not easy work and it takes time, but it's worth it because life is always worth saving." She looked up at Drakthul. "Your people aren't broken, War Prime. They're just lost. But lost things can be found if someone is willing to look for them." As Lisa worked in the dirt, something remarkable happened. One by one, the Kethvar warriors began to kneel down and help her. They had no experience with gardening, but they followed her lead, their massive hands surprisingly gentle as they helped tend the damaged plants. Thulmag was the first to join her, carefully supporting a bent flower stem while she secured it with a small stake. Then Graktos began gathering scattered soil, his claws moving delicately to avoid further damage. Even some of Drakthul's most loyal followers found themselves drawn to the simple act of helping something grow instead of destroying it. I don't understand this, Drakthul said, watching his warriors work alongside their former enemies to save a flower bed. You don't have to understand it, Vorthak said, settling painfully onto the ground to join the restoration effort. You just have to feel it. The satisfaction of making something better instead of worse. The peace that comes from creating instead of destroying. Drakthul stood alone in the center of the garden, watching as the civil war he had started transformed into a communal gardening project. Humans and Kethvar worked side by side, sharing tools and advice, united in the simple goal of healing the damage that violence had caused. Finally, the War Prime knelt down beside Lisa and picked up a small seedling that had been uprooted in the fighting. "Show me how to plant this," he said quietly. Lisa smiled, tears of joy running down her dirt-stained cheeks. "I'd be happy to." As the sun reached its zenith over New Haven, news cameras captured images that would be broadcast across the galaxy for years to come. The most feared military force in known space learning to garden from a human botanist who had believed that friendship could conquer fear. The revolution had begun not with weapons or manifestos, but with soil under fingernails and the patient, work of helping broken things grow whole again. It was a revolution of hope, and it would change the galaxy forever. 1 year later, the botanical garden on New Haven had grown into something no one could have imagined. What had once been a simple collection of earth plants had become a living symbol of cooperation between species. Kethvar warriors tended flower beds alongside human colonists. Children from both races played together under trees that had been planted as symbols of friendship. Lisa Carter stood in the center of it all, watching with satisfaction as Drakthul carefully watered a patch of earth roses that he had become particularly proud of. The former War Prime had traded his battle armor for simple work clothes, and his hands, once weapons of destruction, now coaxed life from the soil with surprising gentleness. "The red ones are blooming beautifully this season," Lisa said, joining him at the rose bed. Drakthul looked up with something that might have been a smile. His face had changed over the past year, the hard lines of constant anger softening into something more peaceful. "I never understood why my grandmother spoke so fondly of the flowers on our homeworld. Now I think I begin to see what she meant." "She would be proud of you," Lisa said. "Perhaps, though I suspect she would say I have. Much work left to do to make up for 3 centuries of destruction. The important thing is that you're doing the work," Lisa reminded him. "That's all any of us can do." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of laughter from across the garden. A group of young Kethvar and human children were playing, together near the stream, their games involving the careful transport of water to thirsty plants rather than mock battles. Among them was Vorthak, now serving as the colony's official head gardener, teaching the youngsters the proper way to transplant seedlings. His wounded shoulder had healed well, though he still moved it carefully when the weather was damp. More importantly, the wounds in his heart had begun to heal too. The nightmares of past battles came less frequently now, replaced by dreams of growing things and peaceful afternoons. "Uncle Vorthak," called out a small human girl named Emma, "the baby tomatoes are ready to pick." "Are you certain, little one?" Vorthak asked, his massive form kneeling down to examine the plants she indicated. "What did we learn about checking if they are ripe?" "They should be red all over and feel a little soft when you squeeze them gently," Emma recited proudly. "Very good. And what do we do with them once we pick them?" Share them with everyone, shouted a young Kethvar named Velshan, whose name honored Vorthak's mother. Because gardens grow better when everyone helps take care of them. Lisa felt tears of joy in her eyes as she watched the children work together. This was what she had dreamed of during those first terrifying days when war seemed inevitable. Not just peace between their peoples, but genuine friendship and cooperation. Captain Murphy approached, carrying a communication pad with news from the outside galaxy. Lisa, you're going to want to hear this. 3 more systems have requested Kethvar assistance with their agricultural programs. That makes 12 in total. Assistance, not conquest? Drakthul asked, looking up from his roses. Assistance, Murphy confirmed. Word has spread about what you've accomplished here. Other worlds want to learn how to grow food in difficult environments. They're specifically requesting Kethvar expertise. The transformation had begun slowly but gained momentum as news of New Haven's success spread throughout the galaxy. The Kethvar fleet, once feared for its destructive power, had become known for something else entirely: their ability to make things grow in places where nothing had grown before. Vorthak had been right about his people's forgotten talents. Centuries of survival in harsh environments had taught them techniques that agricultural worlds could only dream of. Their ships, once designed for war, proved remarkably adaptable for transporting equipment and expertise to struggling colonies. The Council of Worlds has also extended a formal invitation for New Haven to host the first interspecies agricultural summit, Murphy continued. Representatives from 47 different species want to attend. 47, Vorthak mused. The same number of worlds I once conquered. Now you'll help feed 47 worlds instead, Lisa said. I'd say that's an improvement. Dr. Martinez emerged from his laboratory carrying a tray of seedlings. Over the past year, he had worked with Kethvar scientists to develop new hybrid plants that could grow in extreme conditions. His partnership with former war technicians had produced agricultural miracles that neither species could have achieved alone. The new wheat hybrid is exceeding all our expectations, he reported. It can grow in half the water of traditional varieties and produces twice the protein. We'll be able to feed populations on worlds that were previously considered uninhabitable. People will no longer need to take worlds by force, Drakthul said quietly. We can earn our place among the stars through service instead of conquest. As the afternoon wore on, more residents of New Haven gathered in the garden for their daily tea time. It had become a tradition since Lisa's first meeting with Vorthak, a time when the entire community came together to share food, stories, and friendship. Mayor Price arrived with fresh bread from the colony's bakery. Thulmag brought honey from the beehives he had established on his ship. Even former enemies who had once fought in this very garden now sat together peacefully, sharing meals and memories. I have an announcement, Vorthak said as the group gathered around the original tea table, which had been carefully repaired after the battle. The Kethvar High Council has voted unanimously to establish New Haven as our new capital world. The AA news was met with cheers and applause from both humans and Kethvar. After 3 centuries of wandering, the warrior race had finally found a home. But more importantly, Vorthak continued, they have also voted to rename our people. We will no longer be known as the Kethvar Empire. From this day forward, we are the Kethvar Republic, dedicated to growth and cooperation rather than conquest. And our first elected leader? Asked Thulmag with a knowing smile. Vorthak looked embarrassed. The people have chosen me to serve as their first president. I am not sure I am worthy of such honor. You're worthy, Lisa said firmly. You've shown everyone that it's possible to change, to choose a better path. That's exactly the kind of leader your people need. As the celebration continued around them, Lisa and Vorthak found themselves sitting together under the apple tree where they had first shared tea. The tree had grown taller over the past year, its branches heavy with fruit that would be shared among all the residents of New Haven. Do you ever regret it? Lisa asked. Giving up your old life for this one? Vorthak considered the question seriously. I regret the centuries I wasted destroying instead of creating. I regret the lives lost because I was too afraid to believe that peace was possible. But I do not regret the choice you helped me make. What choice was that? To believe that friendship is stronger than fear. To trust that kindness can accomplish what violence never could. To remember that my mother's dream of a galaxy filled with gardens was worth fighting for. As the sun began to set over New Haven, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, children from both species continued to play among the flowers. Their laughter echoed across the garden, a sound that had replaced the thunderous roar of warships. Lisa reached into her pocket and pulled out a small packet of seeds. I have something for you, she said, handing them to Vorthak. What are they? Apple, seeds from the tree we're sitting under. I thought you might want to plant them on some of the worlds you visit. A little piece of New Haven to share with everyone you meet. Vorthak accepted the seeds with the reverence most people reserved for precious gems. I will plant them wherever we go, he promised, and I will tell the story of how they came to be. What story is that? The story of how the galaxy's most feared warrior learned to garden because a kind human invited him for tea. The story of how friendship conquered fear and how a single act of kindness changed the course of history. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, news broadcasts across the galaxy carried the same headline they had featured for months. New Haven continues to bloom. The story of Lisa and Vorthak had become legend, inspiring countless others to choose cooperation over conflict, growth over destruction. And in gardens on dozens of worlds, apple trees grew from seeds that carried within them the memory of an impossible friendship and the promise that even the most broken things could learn to bloom again. The galaxy was learning, one seed at a time, that hello was the most powerful word in any language, and that sometimes all it took to change the universe was inviting someone to sit down and share a cup of tea. In the end, Lisa Carter had been right about one thing. Everyone was worth knowing. Even the monsters, especially the monsters, because sometimes, buried deep beneath all that armor and anger, was someone who just needed a friend to remind them how to grow things instead of destroying them. And that, more than any weapon or conquest, was what true strength looked like.